everybody.
Welcome to Lady Vibe, your podcast for better well-being.
This is your host, Dr. Ning.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic that everybody experiences every day. We're going to have a special guest to share some important tips about how to manage stress. Stress has profound negative effect on our physical and mental health. It affects our immune system. It can affect our cardiovascular system, neurological system, and pretty much everything. When I'm stressed out, I can binge eat or eat unhealthy stuff, which lead to like some weight gain for sure. And I bet you'll probably experience those stress moments too. So an occasional stress is fine, but if it becomes a chronic condition that we have to experience every day, it's going to lead to worse well-being. So that's why we want to touch on this topic and hopefully can get some helpful tips to our audience today. So today's guest is my old friend from UCLA. We just reconnected, so we're going to get her into the studio.
Hi, Ning. Hi, Rachel.
Jenny.
Glad to be on this show with you.
Yeah, welcome to our studio. Thank you so much for joining. So Jenny and I entered UCLA at the same time into the PhD program. I was in epidemiology department and she was in neuroscience back in 2003. So I recently reconnected with Jenny and get to learn her amazing journey from a neuroscience PhD to corporate lawyer and to a executive coach. So Jenny, would you like to share some of, your experience along the way, like what gets you to where you are today?
Thank you, Ning. Yeah, sure. I remember it was more than 20 years ago, right, when we started our PhD program at UCLA. So back then I was also a scientist doing biomedical research in brain stem cells. And then upon graduation, I felt, I don't really like the dynamics of academia. I wanted to do something that's more, fast-paced, more stimulating. So that's when I went to law school and became a corporate lawyer. And as you can imagine, that's a very high-stress job. Is very demanding and stressful, but obviously at the same time it can provide you some degree of intellectual stimulation and of course financial security. So I was trapped in that so-called golden handcuff for 10 plus years. Until I got to a point where I felt like I was really burnt out, which is very related to our topic today, right?
Right.
And I also felt, there's some sort of misalignment between my external success and my own internal truth, basically. And with time, I just figured, I have to face this disconnection. And I started asking questions, is this really it? Am I going to be doing this rest of my life? And then once I stop working as a lawyer, then what, right? It feels like a void. So I started to pursue a spiritual path. I met a Buddhist teacher. And I started doing meditation practices. So that really opened up my eyes. I was able to look at things in a bigger picture and think out of the box. And that's what gradually led me to coaching, because also, I myself went through all these transitions and transformation. and I wanted to help people who are in similar situations. So that's where I am now. I just started a executive coaching business where I'm aiming to help people, who are like me, who are high performing professionals, but somehow they quietly feel there's some sort of misalignment inside. So I help them seek strategic clarity in their career and in their life. So there you are. That's my journey.
And where do you live? I'm so curious.
Good question. I'm based in Kathmandu now, in Nepal, which is a spiritual center where a lot of, hippies and spiritual practitioners come. And this is also where a lot of Buddhist masters live. I'm here doing some volunteering work with some spiritual centers and cultural centers. At the same time, I run my coaching business online.
I love it. And so how long, what led you to move to Nepal? And, were you going from California to Nepal? Tell us a little bit more about sort of your journey in terms of location and sort of how you started getting involved in sort of the Buddhist community, and sort of love to learn more about your journey.
Oh, that would be a long story. So yes, Ning and I met in LA at UCLA. So after graduation, I went to law school and then worked in New York. And then I moved back to Asia, where I'm from. I'm from China, by the way. I lived in Singapore, Hong Kong, for work in the past 10 to 15 years. And then after I left law, I figured I need to go somewhere that's very different from the sort of financial hubs I have been living in. So I came to Nepal. I think first I was just doing some trekking. I went to Everest Base Camp and all that. But that trip struck me. I realized there's a different way of living because, this country is not yet modern, like New York or something, but it has its own charm. People are happy here and they're satisfied with a very simple lifestyle. So I was attracted to that. Plus, it's also a spiritual center. So I stayed, and before I know it, it's been a few years now, and I'm still here.
I have never been to Nepal. I only know that it's a beautiful country, has a lot of high mountains and natural beauty stuff. The spiritual part is definitely appealing. Hopefully, Rachel, you and I can make to Nepal. Visit.
When can we go? I want to go. I need some more peace. How do I get over there?
Whenever you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah, I think what you shared about your feeling and experience as a corporate lawyer can echo with a lot of the professionals in the U.S. and maybe like in many other countries as well, right? As professionals, we work so hard every day and kind of in that rat trap, right? You work really hard and you live a high stress life, and don't even know, and don't even know, sometimes don't even know what's all these about, right? Like, what are we working so hard for? So, and then that kind of stress really burned a lot of people out. I know people who get a heart attack at, 40, in their 40s and 50s. Nowadays, even right, people get cancer in their 30s. It's just like so amazing to see like what kind of a high pressure environment we have created for ourselves. So, I mean, as kind of executive coach now, like, do you feel like we can ever reach like a stress-free state?
I think it comes down to the definition, right? What do you call stress-free? And I think when we say that, we mostly picture, us, spending a weekend retreat at some 5-star resort or lying on the beach in the Caribbean, or chanting Om in a yoga studio, right? And I would say that's a very limited version of being stress free because it's very temporary, right? Like, say, if you go on vacation in Hawaii for a week, and when you come back, you have to go back to your messy and busy life again. And for me, all the time I feel like I need a second vacation to recover from that vacation. So it just goes on. It's like one patch upon another. So that's very limited. I mean, even if you're, say, like a monk meditating in a cave, or you're a hippie like me, or some so-called spiritual practitioner roaming around in Bali or Nepal or something, you might think they have peace of mind or are stress-free, but the thing is, we all have a thing called mind, right? And this mind doesn't stop. You have all sorts of thoughts and emotions that come up. And you can be sitting in a cave physically, but you can't get away from your own mind. So when we say stress-free, a lot of times we're talking about something that's very limited. So I think, to really get to a state where not burned out by stress is to really understand what stress is, right? To me, stress-free would mean, well, it doesn't mean, I'm in another world that's completely peaceful, that's completely different from this world. It doesn't mean nothing bothers me. Yeah, exactly.
Dreaming about a world like that.
Yeah, I don't believe in such a, parallel universe, so to speak. Yeah, I think it doesn't mean you have to escape to another world or suppress your own emotions or fight the stress. I think it actually means you have the strength to be with your emotions or the discomfort that we feel. And that involves, maybe working on our own mind, seeing through our own unfounded assumptions or expectations, hopes and fears and all that. So that's basically what I think of being stress-free.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally kind of align with that, because every time go on vacation, right, come back to real life with hundreds of emails in the mailbox and things you have to handle, it's a more stressful situation after vacation usually. And then when I'm on vacation, if I cannot keep my mind away from work, physically I'm somewhere, but if mentally I'm still at somewhere else, like I can definitely feel the stress. And in a daily life, I feel like there's just so much happening every day, right? You never know what's going to happen the next moment. So we have to learn how to face stress and then manage in a way that is not dramatic and not something that can negatively affect our health, right? So are there any tips that you can share about like how to kind of putting things more in place, kind of, reduce that anxiety, anxiousness about like having so much to do? Like,
yeah, I think, well, I just thought of something when you were describing, the state of being from the perspective of busy woman. I feel like, sometimes we're trying so hard to control things in our life, right? We're always preparing for the future. We're hoping, or maybe unconsciously hoping that the future will be hassle-free, it will be perfect. We're now just working towards that. But the thing is, that kind of future may never come, right? Because we can never fundamentally fix life, so to speak. And so trying to be controlling and manage things, including fighting stress, for example, itself, could just become another layer of stress. So that's just what I thought of. And another funny thing I thought of is, our nervous system doesn't really respond to logic. It actually responds to safety. This is a very funny kind of reptile brain that we have, or you can call it evolutionary survival instinct, right? It's like if you look at the long history of human evolution, many years ago, we just couldn't reason our way through situations. Our brain had to react, right, to threat and act very fast. And then, ironically, evolution hasn't caught up with our modern world yet, right? Like, there's no physical threat like being chased by a beast or something, but our body still responds as if we're threatened by a beast. Like, now the threat could just be an email from work, right? Or an argument with a friend or a difficult conversation. And then in that case, sort of bodily reaction or protection just becomes a prison. We're trapped in that. So I think when we're talking about reducing stress, we really need to learn to work with our nervous system, not to fight it or go against it. What do you think, Ming?
Yeah, but how to work with our nervous system? Like, it sounds like, I for a long time, like, I'm really into Taoism, right? The Taoism advocate for following the way of life or nature, right? So from what you were talking about, I feel like it's along that line, right? Instead of fighting the stress, fighting the things that cause stress with us, we kind of should accept it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think first of all, probably the most important thing for us is to really understand stress at a deeper level, because most of the time when we talk about stress, we're talking about the outer level, right? The obvious pressure or overload. And that's where a lot of the stress management hacks come in, right? You can find on self-help bookshop loads of books on how to do that. Of course, you can also you should manage stress at that level too. A lot of things can help, like prioritize your tasks, make a to-do list, have some sort of roadmap, or do yoga, exercise, all that. But I have to say, these hacks are really temporary. Just like the vacation we were talking about, like the moment you come back to this busy life, the stress comes back. So we need to look deeper than that. I think stress is not just the external overload. It also has something to do with our mindset, right? A lot of times we have a lot of expectations. We hold ourselves up to very high standards. We tend to be perfectionists, all that. So I think especially for professional women who are juggling multiple things, they put a tremendous amount of pressure on ourselves just to pull things. And that comes into my coaching work a lot. People come in talking about their stress, they feel very overwhelmed. But when we talk, actually, a lot of the times it's not about the external stress, it's their own high standard. They may not be aware of it, but through exploring that, they can realize they have unrealistic expectations, or sometimes their unfounded assumption on how other people judge them, all that. So at this level, I think if we can sort of explore our mindset, try to make a mindset shift or reframe our perspectives, that would also help us cope with stress at a deeper level. And then we can still go deeper than that. A lot of times people don't really think about their own internal values or their real needs because they're a lot of times unconscious, and we're not really connecting with them. And then in that context, I think stress actually becomes a signal, right? It's not like you have a task to complete, but you somehow feel something. And stress can be the signal for you to listen in to the deeper level of yourself. Are you really living in sync with your values? Things like that. So in my work, I also help people, try to clarify that and realign with their own values and inner needs. Yeah, bottom line is I feel like when you talk about stress free, you really have to work deeper than the external level. And you can't just like try to eliminate stress. You have to reframe how you look at stress and look at it, stop looking at it as a problem, but as a signal for you to listen to yourself.
Yeah, I think also it's not finding your worth in external, right? And so knowing that this project or this deliverable or this achievement that you're seeking does not translate to who you are. And so it's having those sort of moments where you're sort of, I don't want to call it feeding the good, but you are feeding the good, right? And you're making sure that your mindset is in the right place so you're able to see more clearly. So what are ways that you think you've seen people sort of approach that unattached connection between what they're doing and who they are?
Well, that requires a lot of inner work, right? Because a lot of times we're just not connected with our inner world. Our mind is so busy. Like Ning was saying earlier too, we just like have so many emails to read. Our mind is always busy, even when we're on vacation. So when we're not connecting with ourselves, we're always obsessed, or you can also say distracted by all these tasks, and there's no end to it, right? There's always a to-do list. There's always another thing to do on your calendar. So I think what's important is to really take a pause sometimes and really just be with yourself, connect with yourself. And that actually requires a lot of courage, right? Like think about if you ask yourself to sit on your couch and do nothing for 5 minutes, that's almost unbearable for modern people, right? Like imagine 5 minutes. So we're not used to being with ourselves. And I think that's very important actually for us to handle our stress, because when we're not reconnecting with who we really are, the stress will somehow creep out, even if you do lots of yoga or postpone your whatever task, it's just never gonna really give you the deep level of let's say peace of mind.
So what should we do to try to create that inner connection, understand our inner needs? I'm the type, I have been telling people that, I have not watched any of the popular shows lately. I just feel guilty for sitting there doing nothing, just watch a show. So I have to do something, either multitasking at all times, basically. So what would you suggest people to do, to create that deep connection with their inner self?
You already mentioned Taoism, right, earlier. Actually, that's definitely the wisdom that we should think more about. I think the signature statement of Taoism would be, in Chinese, it's called Wu Wei, right? In English, it would mean doing nothing, but actually achieving everything, something like that. So it's almost like action without action, so to speak. And I think that attitude is very important, because we're like hamsters, right? We're always running and going to the next thing. And this whole world is designed for that sort of lifestyle. Everything is about efficiency and productivity. I think sometimes we just need to kind of sit down and think about what's all this for, right? And I think that's one way of connecting with ourselves. And then, well, coming from a Buddhist perspective, there's also ancient wisdoms that can help us. For example, meditation could definitely help us reduce or handle stress on all those levels that we were talking about earlier. And when I say meditation, I don't really mean it in a religious way, and it's not some sort of spiritual dogma or something mystic. It's also not just about peace of mind. It's actually just about reconnecting with ourselves and building a relationship with our own mind, right? I was giving you this example of sitting on the couch for 5 minutes doing nothing. That's an example of how we can do it. So meditation exactly is the sort of doorway or a method for us to do that. And through that, I think it also helps us to see things in a more clear way, to see the reality. And I would also say it's also a way of living, instead of always rushing.
How do you pause? What has been your strategy to take a break?
Yeah, I mean, there's different techniques, I guess. And in general, there's two ways that I like. One is just more like trying to calm and stabilize the mind through focusing on something. It could be anything. It could be your own breath. It could be a flower or something. And then you just you don't stop thinking, but you try to focus your mind on that object, right? And through that, your mind will calm down. Actually, your body also somehow, stops reacting to stress. Your mind actually regulates your body in terms of stress reactions. So that's one way. You obviously pause because your mind is focused on one point instead of running in 100 directions.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good way to pause. And then another way, generally speaking, I think is to be aware and observe what's going on. Maybe in different dimensions. It could be your own body. Like we sometimes forget that we have a body, right, Rachel? Like you're not aware that you have arms and legs 24/7. We just take it for granted. We're not connected to our body. So sometimes if we try to observe, our body just for 1 minute or something, you will feel different. Your mind is not, scrambling through 100 things anymore. You're more grounded in your own body. Or you could observe your own thoughts. You have a million going on all the time. You can observe how your brain has all these, fantastic or sometimes very strange habitual patterns, right? Like why you think in a certain way. So that's something you can observe. Or your emotions, obviously, and the way you think about things, perspectives, your beliefs and all that. So I think that's another way to take a pause and reconnect with ourselves. We're very interesting creatures. If we observe, it can be actually very entertaining.
One of the things I've heard a lot of people do, especially, kind of what you're talking about, like we have subconscious thoughts that come from our experience or our upbringing or just maybe something that happened to us. So one of the things that I've had the very fortunate opportunity to go through is EMDR therapy, which is where it's for trauma, in which you almost go back and you see the event from your point of view, but like your younger self. And so have you seen success or heard of success in sort of how to battle the subconscious thoughts that may or may not be real truth?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's also popular these days for people to do, hypnosis or something called regression, right? You go way back, and under certain circumstances, you can maybe even remember, old memories, even from past lives or something. And that's supposed to reveal some of the trauma that you're not aware of, but are creating a lot of negative impact on your life. I think that's one way to sort of help ourselves. But there's also limitations, right? You may not be able to find out all these unconscious trauma or past experiences that are affecting you. And there's no end to it, right? So I think there's a limitation. And through what I was talking about, this observation process, it would also help you overcome all these influences or impact from before, because you're not directly tackling them. They show up in certain ways. A lot of times I think it just comes down to habitual patterns, right? For some reason, sometimes you just feel this urge to do a certain thing when there's no obvious reason to it. We can observe how, the trauma or habits that you were talking about manifest in our life, right? So I think observing our mind, it basically is, it can encompass all that, because things can manifest in many ways. And if we observe it, then we can tell ourselves, oh, I have this limited belief, or I see certain things in a certain way. I don't know where that's from, but I know it's showing up right now, and I can do something about it. And then the more you observe, the more you can see through that, and then you can break that pattern by just being with yourself.
Yeah, and what you're saying just make me think that we're kind of lucky. I know you as well. So we have not experienced like dramatic trauma in our lives, right? So far, not like some people, who are sexually abused when they were kids, or like some foster kids go through like a lot of traumas along life. So like the level of impact of those negative effects on negative events on their mentality or on their stress is probably unimaginable for me. But Jenny, are you recommending that so similar methods may work for everyone?
Yeah, I think actually meditation is a pretty universal tool that applies to everyone, because everyone has a mind, right? And all we're doing here is to reconnect with that. And that means being friend with ourselves. I mean, it sounds like a cliche or something that's very simple, but it's extremely rare, actually. And it's actually quite difficult. I want to use this example again. If you're sitting somewhere doing nothing without your phone, you get really bored in 2 minutes max, to say that. So that's actually quite unhealthy for us, because that means we have this need to be constantly entertained, right? So that's just an example of how we are kind of constrained by the way we ignore ourselves. So I think, meditation, or we can just say reconnecting with ourselves, is a pretty universal tool for us to really be ourselves, right? Be our friend. And a lot of times we also have a lot of expectations or assumptions. They can come from, I don't know, culture or our own upbringing, or just social norm or other people's opinions. And a lot of times we're not aware how conditioned we are by those things. And they're actually paralyzing us sometimes, that's a strong word, but at least they are influencing us in a lot of ways. And without really connecting to ourselves, we won't be aware of those things. And then we don't know how they're affecting us in all aspects of our lives. So I think, trying to be friend with ourselves is quite basic and can apply to everyone.
Right. So, Jenny, for someone who has never done meditation before, pure beginner, do you recommend them to connect with a teacher, or, like what would be the tips, what can they do to start?
Yeah, that's a tricky question because I'm sure there's so much information on mindfulness or meditation or self-development or whatnot in every corner. So it can also be a little bit dangerous, I guess, sometimes if you follow some of the charlatans online or people who are actually not legitimate to teach those things. But I think it's also possible to, say, get resources on meditation that's based on ancient Buddhist traditions, because those are, tested with time, and there's lineages that are still alive. So I think that's trustworthy. People can try that out. If you have the karma to meet a teacher, obviously that's great. But I think just by searching for online resources or reading books, it would already help. Or I think everyone can definitely do it on their own. Because meditation is not mysterious or anything. It just means being with ourselves. We could even do a very short meditation together while we're having this conversation. You will see how easy and how effective it can be.
I'm so eager to try, actually. So I guess from what my understanding of what you said is, like, pretty much it can be anytime, anywhere. Like, you can take a pause, try to connect with yourself, and feel your body, and really think about focus on yourself for that moment, not thinking about anything else, not look at TikTok, think about Facebook or anything, right? It can happen anytime, any place, right? It does not have to be at a certain time, at a certain location, or have some setting, be formal, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely also formal practices which help. Like you can sit on a cushion and do very complicated rituals or practice, which also help. But I think for everybody, just being in the present, could already help anywhere, anytime. We don't have to restrict ourselves to some sort of like form.
Yeah. Rachel, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I want to give it a try too. Yeah, let's do it. Should we try?
Sure. Like, Jenny, what should I do?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could do like the simplest one. In the ancient Buddhist tradition, it would be called shamatha. It just means, focusing on one thing. And this is basically trying to help you calm and stabilize your mind. And it also kind of like reinforces your strength of attention, right? And as a byproduct, it actually makes you feel relaxed and calm. But the actual point is to make you see how busy your mind is, because for if you do that for maybe more than 30 seconds or 1 minute, your mind will go elsewhere. And then you have to come back. So it's also a chance just for us to see how busy our minds are. So I guess we could do something like that for a very short time, like 30 seconds or something.
Yeah, and if you're listening to the show, please. I know if you're driving, never mind. But if you're in a safe place, you can try it together with us. Let's just, like Jenny said, think about one thing. Just do it together with us. Just focus on one object for 1 minute. We can start from now.
Yeah, I guess you can just sit comfortably, eyes closed or not, doesn't really matter. Relax your body. And then if you don't have anything to focus on, you could focus on your breath. That's always a very good point to start. Focus on the exhale and inhale. And when you exhale, you can actually take a pause. Take a pause at the end. Once you finish exhaling, you can pause for a second or two, and that's actually where your mind really relaxes for some reason. So we could just do that for 1 minute, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, 1 minute up. How do you guys feel?
I was thinking about my thumb because my thumb got injured a while back and it's still not fully healed. But while I was doing that, I did hear Koa snoring and Luke's playing in the background. So I felt like half of the time I was distracted and half the time I was able to, kind of focus on my thumb.
Yeah, I listened to the air and the air blowing from the computer, and I just noticed my body wanted to keep switching to another topic, and I was like, no, focus. But
yeah, it's basically impossible to stop our mind, right? It's always thinking about something, and that's not the point. We can never stop our mind, but we can train our mind to become more malleable through this practice. And I don't know if you guys felt more relaxed or calm through doing
Definitely.
this.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Jenny, do you have any reliable resources that you can share with our audience? There's so much information on the internet, hard to differentiate what is right, what is wrong. So if you have any resources you can share with us, we can, put it out at the end of the video, and also under the comments.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know everything, obviously. My information is mostly based on Buddhist practices, more specifically Tibetan Buddhism. I mean, also it's at some levels it's the same as other schools, like you say in Thailand, the Theravada people. So I can definitely share some information on that after the show that you can post in the description or comment.
Yeah, that's great. So, Rachel, any other thoughts before we can?
Yeah, I think, the what I thought was really helpful is just like awareness is so key, and just knowing that you don't even fully know how non-present you are until you try to be present, and then your mind keeps shifting. So I think this will be a helpful tool for our audience to, step back and be present and be more aware. So I think, it's really helpful, and I'm excited to hear stories from our audience when they implement this new way to, be mindful, be present. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Jenny, if you can give like 3 take-home points as a summary of our session, what would you say to our audience?
First one would be, I really want to acknowledge, what professional women especially are carrying on their shoulders, career, family, and if you're like us, kind of going through midlife, your own health, your parents' health, the issue related to aging, all that. I really want to acknowledge that we're juggling a lot. And then the second one, I would say, try to reframe stress. It's not something that we fight with, but something that we understand and relate with. So this involves, multiple levels that we talked about, like outer, inner, and the deeper levels. So we can try to work on our mindset and reconnect with ourselves. And the third one, I guess, is to simply meditate or be with ourselves through very simple practices like the shamatha that we just did, by focusing on our breath or anything you can think of. Just a few minutes a day would do a lot. Yeah, so these are the 3 things I can think of. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny. I have found this extremely helpful for myself. I will definitely practice. I hope our audience find the information helpful as well. We can all practice together and report back. So find your true self, like what your values are, and connect your actions with your inner values. And value yourself, connect with your inner self, and take pauses in busy life. Let's all get healthier together. So thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks, Jenny, for joining us today. Have a happy life.
Happy Ladybug Day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good life.
You too. Thank you.